And we welcome you to this special edition of Night Shift, or maybe we start calling this Nightcap Recap because it's late night. I'm Eric Lopez here, alongside Brian Murphy here for the Black and Gold Banneret. And Murph, unfortunately, you know what? We just finished watching the basketball games, women's and men's winning, but that's not what we're here for, are we?
No, I guess we'll do that tomorrow night on the actual podcast. Is at this hour we would usually be recording our usual Wednesday night podcast, but that is not why we're here.
No, it's not, folks. Check out, of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest in UCF. And boy, there's plenty of news, everybody. There we go, UCF_Banneret for the Twitter. That's where you can follow us on Twitter. And then our Facebook page at Black and Gold Banneret. All right. Obviously, the big story over the last, what time is it? 24 hours or so, give and take.
Well, really, I would say it broke about 15 hours ago. Yeah, but we'd heard rumors about this for about 24. Yes,
right. There was a lot of hot rumors going into the night, and I remember this because we were debating. Okay, and a lot of people were okay. Is this Danny White's smokescreen? Right. This is the big smokescreen for him because obviously he's not going to hire Josh Heupel, is he? Well, he did, ladies and gentlemen. As of Wednesday morning, Josh Heupel is your 27th head coach in Tennessee Volunteer football history. And that's what we're going to break down here is Josh Heupel's departure, the Josh Heupel era. We'll analyze that and what is next for UCF and a wild deal here. Of course, you could like us and subscribe on our YouTube page. Our numbers are going up. If that's good, because that means there's a lot of news. So make sure you appreciate you all tuning in on YouTube here. And make sure you have your questions ready as we have some questions there as well. And they're starting to pop up here. Here we go, Murph. So give me your thoughts here, Murph. Your first reaction when you found out it was official that Josh Heupel was leaving to go to Tennessee. Take us through that.
Well, first, because it is a night shift, we got to open up.
There we go.
A little alcohol, a little cash drink maker's mark. It's only 111 proof. It's only 111 proof, Eric. We'll be fine.
I feel like a few nights might need a few of those for like the last month.
This is good stuff. That's pretty good. I was a little surprised this morning. I mean, it's funny. I woke up to our text thread that we have for the site, and it was like trying to wipe the sand out of my eyes. Like, oh, it's happening. Like, it's gone. He's gone. But, we had seen the reports from was it the Vols Rivals site last night on Tuesday. And I'd certainly heard a couple of things about that was, that was real. And this was not a smokescreen. Like, we need to be ready for this. I just did not think. I think the one thing that caught me off guard was that, for me, it seemed to happen so quickly. But I knew it was sort of happening, but I did not expect it to happen the early morning of Wednesday. And then we've just sort of been, digesting the news all day. It's kind of a range of emotions. That press conference was really weird, seeing Danny White and Josh Heupel, two people who were still under the UCF tent a week ago in bright orange, as they introduced Heupel with his jersey, the number 27 jersey today in Knoxville. It was sort of surreal and kind of a whirlwind how quickly all this goes. But I think part of that is just college athletics. And Danny White kind of said that himself. But I know people don't like a lot of what Danny White had to say today about, I didn't want to hurt UCF. I know this is going to really throw them into a tough transition, and I didn't want to do that to them. But it's kind of college athletics, and Josh Heupel was the right fit for us. And those statements seem to be at odds with one another. Like, if you didn't want to hurt UCF and throw them into this, really rapid period where they're going to now to be scrambling for an AD and a football coach, while getting ready for spring practice and while trying to wrap up your February signing class, then, you wouldn't have done it. But again, it is what it is. It's him trying to sort of ride the fence and kind of doing it not that gracefully. Ultimately, it is what it is. This is kind of, unfortunately, it's the state of UCF. The UCF has been and will continue to be for however long a stopping point for other people to come through, try to build up their brand, and go somewhere else.
Appreciate everybody tuning in. We're going to get to your questions. I know one of the questions, by the way, are you guys going to Knoxville too? I could speak for myself. No, I don't think I'm going to Knoxville. Are you going to Knoxville anytime soon, Murph?
Is there a baseball regional in Knoxville in June? That's the only reason why I would go to Knoxville.
Not yet. We don't know. We hope to find out soon with a baseball schedule. By the way, we think it's starting soon. So here's my thoughts on this. I actually do believe what Danny White said, Murph, and I think what I took from that, and you were at the presser, and I kind of watched it later. I don't think Josh Heupel was his first choice. Now he won't say that. You can't say that. But I tend to believe he wasn't the first choice. I think he really wasn't planning. And he even kind of admitted, like, he wasn't thinking he was going to hire Josh Heupel. I think it just evolved. And I think whoever his options were prior to Josh Heupel, whether it be a couple guys or whatever, clearly didn't pan out. And I think Josh was kind of the safety net. And I think that's kind of how we ended up here. And I think it's a win-win for everybody. And I know that's going to sound weird, but I think from Danny White's perspective, he's got a guy that he knows and he trusts in a situation where, let's be honest, Tennessee isn't going to have sanctions. They're going to barely be in probation. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think Danny feels that Josh can deliver here from an offensive standpoint and try to bring Tennessee back to respectability. It's ironic, Murph, because when Josh Heupel arrived at UCF, the expectations were through the roof. You were coming off the national title year, undefeated. You're following Frost being coach of the year. If he lost a game, it was going to be his fault. Now, I actually feel that it's the opposite, where the expectations are low when Heupel at Tennessee, because people are like, I don't know if that's going to work. And I actually think this benefits Josh from that standpoint.
Well, and it's sort of the same way that Scott Frost left, because the expectations at Nebraska were low when he got there. And now after 3 years, the seat is starting to get warm there. Now, the situation could be different in Tennessee, considering what kind of violations and penalties they incur and how much that hamstrings the program. But yeah, I think you're right. Generally, like, Josh Heupel's heading to a job which is SEC. You know, it gives him about a 70% raise yearly from what he was making at UCF. He was making, I think, 2.3 per year at UCF. He signed a $4 million contract per year for either 5 or 6 years today at Tennessee. Plus, you get SEC money, SEC resources, SEC eyeballs. Obviously the shot to win. You have a more legitimate shot at a national title if Tennessee was ever to reach those heights again. But how much time is he going to be given to work through that? But I guess we're going too much on a tangent about Josh Heupel in Tennessee.
I will add to that, based on the contract there, it looks like he's got a big buyout. He's going to make $4 million a year. I think Danny White's going to give him time. Whether Tennessee fans are going to be happy about that or not, well, that's their problem. And I would argue that maybe Tennessee needs a reality.
During the press conference today, and reading the YouTube stream of comments, and you saw a great mixture of, like, Tennessee fans just not very impressed, and UCF fans like happy that he's gone. It's really kind of weird.
It's a weird dynamic. But that's college. I mean, that's sports in general now with social media and everything like that. I just think Tennessee's got to kind of, I think they kind of still think it's 1993, and they got to build some blocks. My thing is, I think if you're Tennessee, you're trying to get back to consistent, relevance as far as get to consistent bowl games. Then you can worry about competing for the SEC title. And I think Josh can do that, because of his offense and his system. But as you said, that's the Josh Heupel story. Let's talk now from a UCF perspective. Now, you mentioned it. This has been a unbelievable month. You love movies and documentaries. Someone needs to get to work on this UCF documentary. I mean, this is just gold. You go from the highs of, Danny White's arrival, bringing in Frost, the national title and all that. So now where we're at, we're in the last month, UCF has lost arguably their most popular football player of all time in Mackenzie Milton, transferring to Florida State. Maybe the guy that was going to be their best defensive back the last couple of years, in Brandon Moore, also to Florida State. You lose the greatest athletic director in school history to Danny White to Tennessee. And then a week later, you lose a head football coach that, say what you will, had one of the best win percentages in college football during this last run. That is wild. That's a heck of an offseason. Please, somebody sell the Netflix 30 for 30. Can somebody do a documentary on that?
Well, I will say, for those fans who are sort of like wondering where we go from here and sort of depressed today because the program seems to be rudderless and not really, and they see coaches leaving, ADs leaving, McKenzie leaving was big. I would just push those fans back to remember 2015. It wasn't that long ago, and the program was in so much worse shape than it is right now. Like, you don't have to do nearly as much work now as you had to do then. And I know, like, today seems rough, but there's talent here. People want this job. UCF, thanks to Scott Frost mostly and Danny White, has built itself as a brand name where coaches want to come, and I think you've seen that in a lot of the rumors about who might be interested and who UCF might be interested in. I know this is a kind of a tough and maybe a bitter day, but there's also the excitement of who is going to lead this program next.
Both from the athletic director side and the head coach, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Let me get some of the questions here. A lot of questions now. A lot of people tuning in. We appreciate that. Eric Edwards chimes in now. One of the big questions he has is the post that was on Instagram that looked like Dillon Gabriel was talking about not getting a goodbye. Do we really think that was him? Well, yeah, I think it's his Instagram. Did Josh, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you were at the presser. He said he did talk to his team, correct?
Josh said they had a team meeting this morning and said, actually, I don't know word for word, but he basically said, I'm proud that we did that. Like he said, it was important for me to do that. And yet you saw Dillon Gabriel and then also Noah Hancock, the defensive lineman, both say on social media that they found out through social media, did not find out from Josh.
Let me defend Josh on a couple points on that. Number one, it's an abrupt meeting. We don't know what these players' class schedules are. Do we know? Like, for example, could it be possible that those guys were literally in class right there and couldn't just get out of class? No. But
Eric, if there's one guy that Josh Heupel needs to make sure he knows, is it not Dillon Gabriel? Is it not Dillon Gabriel?
Well, it's interesting, though, in these searches, because Danny White, this all went quickly. So you wonder, when do you think he should have told him? Should he have told him last night? When was this deal done? Like, what if they told him, hey, man, you got to go? Because the problem is in this industry, Murph, if you don't kind of get going, the story going to leaks out anyway. You're going to get beat. So I don't know. It's I agree. You would probably prefer that everybody heard it from you. But I don't know what's behind the scenes on that. You don't know what Tennessee's telling him. You don't know if he's got to get on a plane, sign the papers. I don't know if they're trying to beat the, press. I don't know. I'd like to hear more. That's all I would like to say before because it sounds like there's two different stories here. And I don't believe Josh is lying. I just think there might have been, I don't believe everybody was in attendance. That's kind of how I take it.
Maybe there's some wires crossed or whatever. I understand, like, we're being too personal about this or at least I am. Because I feel like there's a base level of decorum that a coach needs to show, an offensive coach needs to show his starting quarterback. Literally the guy who has led the program now for 2 seasons. And I don't think Dillon Gabriel would say that on Instagram to sort of like be a rabble rouser. Like, he's not that kind of guy. He's not a guy who says outlandish things. Like, I believe Dillon when he says what he said on Twitter or on Instagram, which was then almost immediately deleted. But it's the internet, so nothing is really ever gone. I just knowing, so putting those two things together, there had to be a better way to handle this. I mean, yeah, you say it all came together quickly. Maybe it did, and it was early morning where he was headed off to Knoxville. Great, but like, you got to shoot him a text or a phone call like early in the morning. Like, if Pete Thamel knows by 7:30 this morning that Josh Heupel is going to be the Tennessee head coach, like, Josh at that point's got to send a message. To Dillon. If he can't make the meeting, he's got to my only thing is he's got to let Dillon know. You got to let your quarterback know.
Well, and I think sometimes these people got to realize the media is going to get the scoop one way or the other. So why not just, like, perhaps in retrospect, if Pete Thamel had this in the morning, maybe you trying to have this meeting last night when nobody was expecting it instead of now. Who knows? I mean, But anyway,
we're going way too far along on
right.
On this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, next, Bryson Turner. And I think it's a question that some are asking tonight. Is this the end of the UC Fast era?
Absolutely not. UC Fast. It's UC Fast, right? Why have I never got this right?
I don't
It's been
know.
4 years. It's UC Fast. No, it's not over because UC Fast is a style of play. It's a mindset. It's a coaching style. I mean, really, if we wanted to say it was over, we could have said that with Scott Frost, and then maybe some people did. But then when you bring in a coach of Heupel's bona fides who is going to run a very similar type system, then UC Fast lives on. And I believe because the players over here, the system that they've been sort of trained to play in, especially with Gabriel and the offensive players, I think UCF has sort of made their bed and sort of has to hire a coach who will run that type of system. So, no, UC Fast is here to stay until UCF hires a slow down tempo coach, and I just don't see that happening.
Michael Rakowski asked the question, how much money is UCF getting from Tennessee?
Well, Eric, they're splitting you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're splitting his buyout, right? Is UCF getting all $3.6 million, or are they only getting half of it?
Well, see, that's what we're trying to find out. The reports are they're getting it's half of it, but is that because Tennessee is paying half of it and Josh Heupel's paying the other half, or is there something in the works here? I don't know. That's a very good question. What I can tell you, keep in mind, Danny White, when he left, there was a $2.5 million buyout, and Danny White 3.5, which I believe was reported by our own Danny Medina. So let's say even if it's a half of that, UCF's going to end up with about what anywhere between $4 to $6 million in these two transactions, which is not a bad deal there. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at, depending on the language there, and who knows what the behind the scenes talks were. Like, for example, if they only take half of Heupel's buyout, maybe there's an agreement there that we're not aware of for something down the road. Who knows? Whether maybe they'll agree to play in a game down the road. I know that happened with Florida and Colorado State a few years back when Jim McElwain was hired from Colorado State to Florida, and instead of paying all the buyout, Florida basically gave him a game to come to Florida. And I think it was maybe a 2-for-1. I don't remember, but that was part of the transaction deal. So who knows?
Well, I think, the shorthand is that Heupel's buyout is about $3.6 million, and UCF is getting at least half of that we know of, and possibly more. And if you add Danny White's buyout, it's a little more than $4 million at the least, up to about $6 million, as far as we know.
Jeff Wiseman with the question, has the AD job become more desirable now that the new AD isn't tied to Heupel and gets to hire their own coach? I think that, I don't know if I would say it's more desirable. I think it's a pretty desirable job as it is. Chris Vanini has written about that on The Athletic and tweeted about that today. I will say this, though. I do think it's a good thing that the AD picks the coach, and it's basically that's his guy. I think you always have this kind of awkward deal when you inherit a coach. So I actually don't think it's the worst thing in the world that we have a new AD and a head coach at the same time. From that standpoint, the timing is not good. And obviously we'll get into what we think now is going to be the timetable in this, because President Cartwright had originally said he thinks it was going to be a month before they hire an AD. I think that's going to get sped up slightly. I don't think they need to speed it up and panic, because I think that'd be the worst thing you can do. But I do think now this process gets kind of sped up a little bit.
Well, President Cartwright in his release this morning stated that they haven't even hired the search firm for the AD yet, and they're going to take another week to do that, which I was a little surprised about. Like, it feels like they're kind of going slowly on that front just to get the search firm in place to go look for your AD. But so, all of this needs to be accelerated because of Heupel leaving now. I think more so than anything, I feel like it's I don't know if UCF. I don't think UCF will needed a restart. I mean, they really didn't. I know that last season was really rough for fans, and 6-4. It's not what you want, but also last season was just so awkward, and a lot of guys opting out. And then you had the November incident, which guys get kicked off the team, and so I don't know how much of that 6-4 can you really say is the team, and how much of it was just bad circumstances for the season that was. So I don't know if it would need a full reset, but that's what they're getting. And I think all fans, as right now, it's hard. It's hard to be positive about it because we just don't know what the future is. But there's a refreshing aspect to that. We don't know what the future is. Then it's gonna be a brand new future for UCF football, like fully brand new. Like this is a reset. And as troubling as this past week has been, it is sort of exciting.
It is, and again, I think people kind of what you don't want to do is make an irrational decision right away because, oh my goodness, we got to make a hire in X amount of days. You have to make the proper hires, whatever the length is. I would rather them take their time and make the right choice. And if it means affecting the 2021 football season, then so be it. I'm about the big picture, the next 5 to 10 years, not about just one season or one fall. I think that's something to keep in mind on this. I know it's easier said than done. I know people are freaking out, signing day, all this stuff. But I really do believe the last thing you want to do, because I've seen schools do this, Murph. I would argue Florida State did this a few years ago, and Jimbo left, and they quickly went with Willie Taggart, and that turned into a disaster because it was a quick and irrational decision. I think in retrospect, they probably wish they would have done a deeper search. I think that's important that you get the right person, because if you make the bad hire, this could set you back years. And I'm not just talking about the football program. I'm talking about your athletic department. Yeah.
And you're exactly right. And so, for those who want more about the AD search, I believe we've already covered that in print and on the site in our night shift when Danny White left. So certainly go look at that. But Eric, should we get into who we believe to be the next coaching candidates for UCF's head football coach?
Well, yes, because Bryson Turner is asking, is it too soon to speculate on head coach replacements since we don't have an AD yet? The answer is no, Bryson. It's never too early, buddy. Come on.
Bryson, go to the website. If there's one thing that this site does, it's speculate aimlessly and quickly.
This guy right here. I kind of like it. And it just so happens, folks, if you go to the site right now, right there, look, we got an article. Hey, content, myself and Andrew Glukov, with the list of coaches there. We got 12 potential coaches to really kind of scare. Do we, and I think worth pointing out, I think the head coach, you have to hire the AD first, obviously. And I think whoever the AD is will have an impact on who the next head coach is. I would not be surprised, Murph, from a timetable standpoint, if you see an AD hire and the head coach within hours or a couple days apart. I think it's going to be that close. I really do.
Well, because so you're saying that maybe the AD announcement won't be official, but it'll have already been like a handshake deal. It already been done. And then while that's happening, that AD will then go out and find his new head coach, and it'll sort of be like a joint agreement, a joint announcement of hiring.
Yeah, because I think I got to believe it. When these interviews are taking place with the ADs, the head football coach topic's going to come up. And while this process is going on, I'm sure the AD's thinking, hey, if I get this AD job, do you want to be the head coach here and stuff like that? I don't think they're just going to wait till, hey, I got the job, let me start the search. I really think it's going to be a quick turnaround. I think we've seen this in sports sometimes when the GM in a football or baseball team is hired and then poof, the baseball manager comes right with it or something if both jobs are open. It would not shock me on that. So keep that in mind. But let's go through some names here on the list. Jamie Chatwell. We're going in alphabetical order, by the way. Coastal Carolina obviously had the great year. That's the negative there, though, Murph. He really hasn't done it for a long term. He just got an extension there. Now, if the AD, and this is an example, if the AD for Coastal Carolina ends up being the AD at UCF, then, boy, doesn't that make sense as a package deal?
Right.
So I think we'll see how that goes, but obviously his name is floated.
I think I've seen that sort of thing happen before at another university. Oh, wait. Yes, it did.
Yeah, we just saw it in Knoxville. That's Lance Leipold. This is Andrew Glukov, who's the president of the Lance Leipold fan club, Buffalo head coach. That is his choice. He has been calling this for a while, and I think he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. Here's where me and Andrew have disagreed about this. My issue there is I feel like he's a Northeast guy. Really doesn't have South ties in the South. I think he's more of a Syracuse, some program in the Northeast Power 5 next move. I just don't see him coming to UCF, especially since Danny White was the one who hired him at Buffalo. He's not here anymore. So I just don't see the fit. Plus, he's 56, which is not old in coaching, but it's not super young. What's your opinion on that? Do you care about the age of the coach? Because some people do. Some think that the UCF is you need a young, energetic guy. Some people don't. What's your take on all that?
No, I think like age is like, I don't want to be like cliche, but age is sort of a number, and I don't really care if he's got the vigor to be around 18, 19, 20-year-olds and relate to them. Then I don't care if he's 56 or whatever. That's fine with me. It's interesting you bring up. Like, I do think with Danny White being gone, I think that he's just not as much in the picture as he would have been. But hey, we've seen a coach around here recruit the Northeast. It kind of worked out well for George O'Leary.
Oh boy, there you go. George active there. There you see there, Billy Napier, Louisiana head coach. He's been a hot name. He's been rumored for some SEC jobs. Hasn't really pulled the trigger. Now again, if you look at our Black and Gold Banneret article on the athletic director, Louisiana's AD, Brian Maggard, is also listed there. So again, this is an example, Murph. Let's say UCF settles on a Brian Maggard, then I think Napier becomes a big name there as a possibility. I think that's where another example of a package deal.
I mean, do you think, because I know there's even, we've got a Clemson name in here. I know Clemson's assistant AD was on our AD list. Yep. Do you think it's more likely than not that UCF's AD head coach will sort of come from the same school?
I will say it comes from, there's a connection. There's going to be a connection. I really do. Because if you're an AD and again, we just saw this with Danny, this is your first big hire is going to be the football coach. You want somebody that you know, right? And I think that's why Danny settled on Josh. At the end of the day, Danny knows Josh. He's comfortable with Josh, despite what fans think. I think Danny generally likes Josh. And I think Josh likes working for Danny, right? Would you agree with that? So
Absolutely.
So I think that's why I think there's going to be a connection there, ties. You mentioned Clemson, Tony Elliott. Interesting. There's been reports, Football Scoop reported recently that Danny White went after Tony Elliott the last time the job was open before he hired Josh Heupel. Elliott's been a hot name, but seems to have turned down jobs. Some people think he's just going to be the head coach in waiting for if Dabo Swinney retires, or some people think might leave for Alabama when Nick Saban retires. I don't know what to believe in that. I mean, Jeff Scott just left Clemson to go to South Florida, so it'd be kind of weird if Tony Elliott comes to UCF and you have the battle of the Clemson coordinators between the I-4 war and I-4. That'd
be lovely. I'd love that.
That'd be like an honorary captain for Dabo. Now, here's a guy you like, Graham Harrell, USC offensive coordinator, played at Texas Tech. What you like that name? Why?
I think if you are UCF and you've got Dylan Gabriel for maybe 2 more years, I know he could leave after his junior year next season, but let's say you have him for 2 more years. You need to function. You need to fashion an offense around him with the same sort of up tempo, fast-paced style. And Graham Harrell provides that. He obviously played in it under Mike Leach at Texas Tech, and he knows how that works. He and Josh Heupel are sort of disciples of the same system. So I think for UCF, I really do think that like UCF's head coach will be another offensive-centric, up-tempo coach, because I think that's what you need a coach to play to this team's strengths, and that's what this team's strength is right now.
That's what the personnel absorbs, and plus, you want to keep the players kind of happy to some extent. You're probably going to have some departures either way, whoever you hire, but if you hire a coach that fits what these players, like you mentioned, system, that increases your chances of keeping the nucleus, keeping the guys, and building around that. So I agree 100% with that. Here's a guy that I like, Murph, and I'm going to tell you why. Rhett Lashley. He's Miami's offensive coordinator, had a good year with De'Aaron King, was at SMU prior to that. He comes from the Gus Malzahn tree, was his coordinator at Auburn when they played for the national title. He was in Auburn for a few years. You know who also was at Auburn when Rhett Lashley and Gus Malzahn was there?
Who?
Scott Carr, who's now the interim AD at UCF. What do you know? Hey, I think maybe they've hung around.
Oh, and goodness.
So this is my point. Let's say if Scott Carr gets the job full-time, to me, a Rhett Lashley or Gus Malzahn is probably going to be 2 guys at the top of the list because he knows those guys. And I think Rhett Lashley is very good, has a good offense, good design. He's been successful in multiple places. I feel he's going to be a next big-time head coach prospect. The question is when and where. And perhaps UCF could be the place for him. He's already in the state now. He's already began recruiting, working for Manny Diaz in Miami.
You know that South Florida connection is really important. UCF has hammered that home the past few recruiting cycles with Randy Shannon being here. I agree. Again, another offensive coach they need to look at. I've seen people on social media who approve of Rhett Lashley working with Derek King. So that's a stylistic fit. And yeah, I mean, the Scott Carr tie-in is interesting. I just don't know if Scott will actually be upgraded to full-time AD, but I guess we can talk about that later.
That's the point. I mean, until we know who the AD. Now let's talk about this guy because he's come up here today a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Lebby, ladies and gentlemen, former UCF coordinator, is at Ole Miss. A lot of players, former players, Murph, on social media throughout the day campaigning for Jeff Lebby. What can you tell us about this? You've kind of been around there. I mean, Jeff Lebby was popular with the players. Obviously was here with Heupel. He's with the offense coordinator with Lane Kiffin. I've heard tonight that speculation is that Jeff Lebby obviously would be interested in coming here as the head coach, and which makes sense, right? That's his next step is you want to be a head coach. So, of course, why not go back to a place you're familiar with, like a UCF would be a good landing spot for him. Whether UCF agrees with that or not, who knows? But your thoughts.
And a guy who's worked with Gabriel since his freshman year, and obviously knows the offense, and obviously, like you said, Eric, probably a small sample size aside, probably the most mentioned name out of the mouths of UCF players and former players on Twitter today being Coach Lebby. But it's because they have that connection there, and it does show you that they do. There is a friendship there. It's like you've seen when other coaches left, there was a little bit of backbiting, and maybe guys were kind of happy they left. But I think people really, really respect Jeff Lebby, the players here, the players who were here, and that matters. That absolutely matters to not only keeping those who are still here happy, but also involving previous classes, previous players to still be a part of this program. I think that unity, and if we're going to talk about family and all that stuff that Heupel loved to talk about, a family unit, then getting a guy like Jeff Lebby is important, plus the fact that he is that kind of head coach that would run the same type of system, which would fit this offense.
Be an easier transition, right?
It would be no transition. It would be no transition. They're running the same offense.
I guess the one question skeptics would say is, do we know if he's good? Like he worked under Josh Heupel. Everybody was Josh Heupel's offense. He's at Ole Miss. I know he's the coordinator and calling, but people know that as Lane Kiffin's offense, basically. So do we know if he can do it on his own? I guess that would be what the critics would say. Whether it's fair or not, I think that would be the one question.
Boy, that sounds like an Eric Bieniemy argument, right? Like, well, it's really Andy Reid's offense, but if he's been attached to it, if he's been a top lieutenant and successful offenses, then why not just let's give him a shot to prove that he can. I mean, you don't know you can do it until they give you a chance to do it. But anyway,
I agree. The one interesting domino about this, if it were to happen, we don't know, but if this were to happen, and Jeff Lebby, let's say, ends up as the next head coach at UCF, I'm fascinated to see what that means for Kevin Smith, who's the running back coach at Ole Miss. So in other words, does Kevin Smith follow Jeff Lebby and come home? Or does he get promoted to be a coordinator at Ole Miss, right? That's a fun little debate there. I'm fascinated by that.
Well, now again, UCF has already hired a running backs coach. They just hired Matt Merritt from James Madison to replace Anthony Tucker. So are you saying that 24K would come back to fill that old spot, or would you give him a promotion, or what are you envisioning?
It depends. Who's sticking around from this staff, Murph? I mean, if we've learned anything over the last week, I mean, who knows who else is joining Josh at Tennessee? You got to believe Josh is going to take some of the guys. In fact, some of the people have already asking about that. Like some people think Joey Hazel, the quarterback coach, and Alex Golish will follow. Do you buy that? I mean, I don't know if you want to speculate on who you think on this staff right now would possibly follow him at Tennessee.
I mean, so the thing about that, Josh Heupel said explicitly today that he will look to hire assistant coaches from UCF's current staff to bring them to Tennessee. He was then also asked if he will recruit any of UCF's current players, and then said, "No, I can't. I won't do that. That's not the right thing to do." But a little secret here: he can't actually say that on the record. You can't say that you're going to steal players from another university. So he might still do it.
Especially there right now with all the sanctions that's coming. You probably
But no, I mean Joey. Oh my God, Joey Halsley would seem to be like an obvious candidate to go. A guy who Heupel coached at Oklahoma. He's followed them to multiple universities. He's really sort of ridden alongside Heupel almost everywhere he's gone. That seems to be an obvious guy who would leave. Golesh, probably so. Maybe so. Yeah, but the fact is, certainly there will be, I think, multiple assistants leaving to go to Tennessee in short order.
Yeah, and to my point about Kevin Smith, you mentioned that running back hire. Well, he just got hired by Josh. Who knows? Josh might just rehire him to go over there. We don't know. So, who knows? Stay tuned. It's a revolving door. So I'm just fascinated by Kevin Smith. I'm a big fan of his. I'm friends with him. Friendly, not tight friends.
Well,
but friends.
Eric, it would be gigantic for the program, bringing back arguably a top 5. I mean, he is a top 5 UCF player all time. Where did you have Kevin Smith in your top UCF football players of all time ranking during the summer? You had him at 2.
I had him at 2. Yeah.
The only guy behind Dante Culpepper, basically. I mean, really, one of the best players in program history coming back to Orlando to coach at UCF. It would be a gigantic story, which, let's be honest, that's the only reason why I would care about it.
But he's done a good job at FAU. He developed Devin Singletary, who's in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills. He's done a good job. I mean, he's a good coach. So I'm just kind of curious. And again, I think it's good news for Kevin Smith either way, because like you said, he could be the running back coach here, maybe a promotion. Maybe he's the offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator title with Levy. That's what gets him here. Or he gets promoted at Ole Miss. Either way, Kevin Smith would be in good situation. That's all I'm saying. And I'm fascinated by that part, because I'm fascinated by his career moving forward. So Jeff, he's an interesting guy. Next game on the list here, Barry Odom, former head coach of Missouri, defensive coordinator. I kind of agree with you, Murph. I don't see them going a defensive style coach. I just don't think it's a fit. But you want to throw some contrast ideas. You don't want to just be married to one approach. So sure. Barry Odom, a defensive coordinator, has been brought up. And here's one I want to bring up. Gene Chizik, former UCF defensive coordinator back in 98 to 01. When I was a student, a quick story, my first game I ever covered was in 2001. First road game I ever covered as a student media for it was the newspaper that was trying to rival the Future back then, the Central Florida Future. It did not work. But I got to go to Clemson. UCF played Clemson, Woody Danzler and company. And I got to travel with UCF back then, which is kind of crazy thinking back on that. They lost to Clemson. Post-game, one of the guys I interviewed was defensive coordinator Gene Chizik, because they held Clemson to 21 points and things like that. That's my Gene Chizik story of the day. Obviously, he's won a national title at Auburn, and he's currently the SEC Network analyst. Your reaction to Gene Chizik?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot I can bring to this other than I've heard, like, Chizik is one of the names that I've heard that UCF will be very interested in him. I think he's going to get at least an interview. And I know that might be a little weird because, again, he's a defensive-minded guy. He hasn't been a coach for a few years. There was, obviously the way he left Auburn, it wasn't the neatest exit or the cleanest exit. So not everything is like the perfect fit, but it certainly seems like UCF, from what I've heard, will be interested in Gene Chizik.
And he's interviewed in the past. So, we'll see what that means. But look, I mean, he's got good credentials, so we'll see how that goes there. There's Alex Golesh. That's one of those inside curveballs. Does he get an interview? But I think the likeliness there is that he probably follows Josh. Would you, if you had to handicap that?
Yeah, possibly so. I would just say also, if we're looking at a head coaching together, like a head coach, if we're just very, basing the merits of being a head coach, like, he's been a tight ends coach and recruiting coordinator for basically all his life in college athletics. He was a co-offensive coordinator this past season at UCF, but really it was, like we said, it was Josh's offense. He was calling the plays. I think we're just covering our bases here with the Golesh. I don't think he'd be the first guy to go follow Josh. not that I think they certainly enjoy each other and like each other. I think Halsley is in. Now you brought up Halsley. I can't stop thinking about the fact that he's definitely going to go. But I think Golesh would be maybe close behind if he were so enthralled.
Yeah, that's interesting there. We'll see what happens. Here's Gus Malzahn. Kind of an interesting name. Successful at Auburn, but Auburn weren't happy with him. I mentioned earlier, he was there. He was the head coach there when Scott Carr was at Auburn. Big name, played for a national title. There's been whispers over the years that Gus was interested in this job way back when. Big name, but my question is, would he be excited to be back at a UCF after being at Auburn? What do you think? Is this a pipe dream? Is this realistic? Is this something that UCF should pursue? He is available right now. He has no job.
Yeah, and I know our Jeff Sharon has some very strong feelings about this. I believe Jeff said earlier today, anybody but Gus.
I love that. The guy, by the way, beat Nick. No SEC coach beat Nick Saban more than Gus Malzahn. I just want to point that out.
When's UCF playing Alabama? I don't know. It would be a flashy name. It would certainly create some buzz, on the back pages, as it were. Even though we're not in New York, but it would be flashy. It would be entertaining in the sense that they've got the former Auburn head coach and a very successful one at that, in-house. But I don't know if it's probably not going to happen. No.
Yeah, I don't either. But again, Rhett Lashley might be the board option. And then here's Randy Shannon. Everybody, hey, interim head coach, was named the interim head coach. We have documented very well his contract. He's making good money. He was a former head coach at Miami. So he has head coaching experience. And as one of us just wrote in, what about an awesome young offensive coordinator and make Shannon the head coach? Is that something that's feasible there, Murph? Shannon, make him the head coach and bring in a big young offensive coordinator to pair up with Shannon. Possibly.
I just see Shannon as a defensive coordinator lifer. And obviously he was the head coach of Miami for a few years. He was the interim head coach of Florida for a year. But I think he really wants to just concentrate on being the DC. I don't know if there's a lot of interest on his end to go back into the head coaching ranks. If you're going to do that, then you need to hire, obviously a whiz kid OC. But I really think that Randy's going to stay at DC. I'd be surprised if they take the interim tag off of him and make him a full-time head coach.
I also wonder, could he be a guy in play for whoever the new head coach is? Let's say they bring somebody, it's a new head coach. Could he be a guy that's a candidate to stay because the new head coach wants to keep certain, sometimes new head coaches keep certain guys just because they know how everything works in that program. Could he be that guy?
Randy Shannon kind of operates on a different level, right? I mean, it's Randy Shannon. He is one of the, highest paid, foremost known assistants, certainly at the G5 level. Like, he's not just another defensive coordinator. So he sort of works, outside the box of most of your other G5 coordinators. So yeah, I think what Randy Shannon wants to do, Randy Shannon's gonna do. That's what I really think. I think he sort of marches to the beat of his own drum. I think he's most happy being a DC. If he wants to stay under the new head coach, that's fine. But I could see him going either way. But I really feel like no one's going to tell Randy Shannon what he's going to do. At this point in his career, I think he's going to earn that.
I agree. I tend to agree. So many fascinating subplots to all this is how this is all going to play out. Some people asking, would he leave Coastal considering how young the program is? Yeah, I have a simple answer to that. Show me the money, right? Jerry Maguire, show me the money. Tom Cruise.
Yes.
If you show coaches the money, they tend to leave. So I don't know if he would, but if, depending on the offers, maybe he would. It's not like Coastal's making a ton of money either up there at Myrtle. So we'll see. And again, as I mentioned earlier, let's say the Coastal Carolina AD gets hired here. That's your package deal. That's what's so fascinating about this. It's going to be really fascinating. Some people not happy about Gene Chizik. I won't repeat the words that were used here to describe Gene Chizik, but we're going to keep it PG. Somebody says we need Malzahn. Some disagree. So there's an argument. Another one says, how about Scott Frost as coach and AD? Why does – oh, my goodness, Scott Frost, man. I love it. We don't like him. We want him to fail, but then we want him back.
We want him back.
Okay.
But that just goes to show, when people were yelling at him and acting out, they didn't really hate Scott Frost. They hated that he was leaving. Everybody still, you gotta love Scott Frost, guys. Okay, I understand people might be upset that he left, and I'm not going to rehash all of the right reasons for why he left, but you have to still respect Scott for what he did for this program. Again, if Scott doesn't do what he did for this program, we're not going through a long gamut list of head coaching possibilities. No one's knocking down the door to get this gig because it probably wouldn't be as attractive as it is now. I really think that's because of Scott, first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree. And I mentioned earlier that I thought this move is a good move for everybody. And I include UCF in this because I feel, Murph, that the Josh Heupel thing was not – fairly or not, he has lost some of the support from the fan base. That's, I think, is fair to say.
Really think so?
I'm just being nice. And I get it that, hey, wins solve everything. But I just feel like no matter what he was going to do here, he was always going to be compared to Scott Frost. Mm-hmm. Fairly or not, right? Even though Scott was only here for 2 years, we have no idea if things would have be better or worse or anything. But there's that image, and we all do this in sports and movies, right? If we love a movie that great, we always think highly of that actor. And then if there's a sequel and the actor's not returning, then we don't like the sequel automatically, no matter what, right? I mean, that's kind of what happens there. Like Speed, I love Speed with Keanu Reeves. The second one, Jason Patrick, forget it. I don't even acknowledge it. All right. But
I appreciate the movie references that have been sprinkled in throughout this night's show.
I try. So I feel this is a good thing for everybody because I feel like now everybody can move on. I don't think Josh was ever going to win a lot of that support back. Yeah, if he wins and turned it around and win the league, you get some of that back. But there was always that but. Now he gets to do his thing at Tennessee. And I think fans now, I hope what happens here, Brian, whoever the next head coach is, we can finally put to rest this whole stuff about comparing guys to Frost or this or that. And we just focus on the guy in the present and see what happens and see, hey, let's see if this guy's good and just have different expectation than, hey, we should go undefeated and the last guy did it and everything like that. It's almost like that old theory about you don't want to be the guy that follows the guy. Even though it's weird that Frost is only here 2 years, I do feel that Frost is kind of a legend. And it's probably going to, right? Heck, we contributed to that here at Black and Gold Banneret. We ranked them, top 5 all-time head coach at UCF. So we're guilty of that.
I mean,
so now,
obviously, yeah.
So you don't have a guy that's following Frost now.
Josh came in, we can reflect on it, but I think we also knew it at the time. Josh kind of came into an unwinnable situation of, the program had already reached the highest of heights, and they probably can't exceed those heights no matter what they do. And now you want to have the new coach come in and bring the program to a higher level. It was really impossible. He was asked to do the impossible, and that's how a 9-3 season, almost led to a mutiny from the fan base because they were just so apoplectic about this failure of a 9-3 season in 2019. But that's because the bar had been set so high by his predecessor 2 years prior. So now 6-4 is just untenable under any circumstance. And yeah, it's really difficult. It's really to follow the act that he had to follow. Now, obviously, Josh had faults. I think he does get too much blame for the close losses because, again, some of those things just happen because a player or two doesn't go your way. A player or two could have gone against UCF in 2018 and they wouldn't have finished that regular season perfect. And so I feel like that much is there's too much put on him there. But certainly there's a lack of creativity at some points. There's a static feeling to his offenses at some points. As explosive as it can be, it seems like at some points defenses can find a way to shut it down, and UCF can't adjust out of that, which is on coaching. But overall, I thought Josh had a pretty successful tenure here. Certainly nothing like what Scott Frost had achieved, but that's because you couldn't achieve more than what Scott Frost did. You can't go more than winning your New Year's Six Bowl until you allow a G5 team to get into the playoff. And so UCF has reached its ceiling. We've seen the ceiling. And Josh Heupel, came close to that in his first year. And obviously he's been backtracking a little bit since. But overall, I think it was a pretty successful 3 years. Now we start fresh. Hopefully expectations have lowered a little bit, people, please. And we'll see where they go from here.
And I would argue that Josh is following Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee is easier than following Scott Frost at UCF. As weird as that sounds, that's why I like the move for Josh, because the levels are level. I know he's got some sanctions and stuff, but I think like if he were to make Tennessee go 7-5, let's say, and 8 or 7-5, and score average like 35, 40 points a game, I think the mood at Tennessee is like, man, this is kind of fun at least to watch, right?
Yeah.
Whereas he goes 7-5, 8-4 here, people want him fired. That's the difference right now where both programs are.
Well, Danny White mentioned that today about, why hire Josh Heupel. And he mentioned, the things we've heard before about the guy who does all the right things and wants to build a family atmosphere, but also mentioned that he runs an exciting style of play. Kids want to play for that style. Kids want the up-tempo, high-scoring. It's an entertaining watch. It's entertaining to play in. It's fun. It's a fun style. That's one of the reasons why he was a wanted man. And I believe UCF will find a similar head coach to be his replacement.
Mike Doty chaining in is a fan of ours, reads our stuff. Thank you, Mike, for chiming in here, tuning in. He goes, I could very well see UCF do a big announcement with Ren Baker as the AD and Graham Harrell as the head coach, since Ren has the Missouri connection to Cartwright and Harrell was at North Texas with Baker. Really good point, Mike. And I like that. See, and obviously we got good fans here. I like what they're thinking. For those that don't know, Ren Baker is the AD right now at North Texas. He's on our list. If you go to our Black and Go Banneret, our AD list is there. He's very good. He's done a good job in North Texas. He's right. He was at Missouri prior to that. Graham Harrell was the head coach at North Texas there when Ren was there. That's not a bad connection to keep in mind in your back pocket there as a possibility. We talked Graham Harrell earlier. Ren Baker is one of the ADs that is up and coming in this industry. More comments here about Graham Harrell. I know we want to stop comparing to Frost, but Graham Harrell would be another legendary quarterback in college for the school and is now an up-and-coming Pac-12 offensive coordinator with a high-flying offense. So basically, it's ironic. If Harrell right now is an offensive coordinator in the Pac-12 with USC, kind of like what Scott Frost was, an offensive coordinator at Oregon. That's an interesting comparison. I didn't think about that.
I guess, yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, it's funny, like, UCF has had their last 3 head coaches would have played college ball at quarterback Nebraska, quarterback Oklahoma, quarterback Texas Tech. We're just running through the Big 12.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really think about it that way. I just feel like for what Graham Harrell does and what he is proficient in, it fits the personnel.
Here's a good point from Jim John. Josh Heupel was a Mackenzie Milton injury away from being undefeated in 2018. That's a fascinating what if. What if Mackenzie doesn't get hurt? How is Josh Heupel's legacy different now? And I know you hate the what ifs, Murph, but think about that, Murph. He inherited Mackenzie Milton. He has this freakish injury that basically ends his UCF career. I mean, that does change the complexion of Josh's run that we kind of dismiss, right? Like, we take that for granted. Oh, you just lost Mackenzie Milton. So what? I mean, who knows? Maybe they do win, go undefeated and win against LSU in the 18th. And maybe we have a completely different picture. I know it's a what if, but it is a fascinating thought to ponder, I think, for some people there.
I mean, but that changes everything, and not just 2018. And really, when I think of Josh Heupel and where he came up short, I don't think of 2018 at all. The guy went undefeated and then lost by 8 to LSU with the backup quarterback, as we've as has been stated here. Like, that was a total success here. It was a massive success. But also, Mackenzie doesn't get hurt. Then you don't bring in Brandon Wimbush. Then you really don't give Dylan Gabriel a window to develop. So it's still Mackenzie's team, possibly. All in all, to be fair, if Mackenzie doesn't get hurt, I feel very comfortable in saying Josh Heupel is still the head coach of Tennessee today. So it is what it is. Yeah,
thank you.
Because
by the way,
obviously,
yeah.
I mean, So if he has better seasons, so if McKenzie stays healthy and he goes undefeated, and then let's say instead of going 9-3, they go 11-1, and then last year they go like in his senior year they go 8-5 or whatever. Why would a better record keep Josh Heupel here? Like Tennessee still would have hired Danny White, and he still would have had now even more reason to hire Josh Heupel because he had more success with McKenzie Milton as his quarterback. So it doesn't change anything for Josh Heupel. Maybe it changes something for the program because you would have more victories. But I mean, I don't know. It doesn't change anything for what we're talking about today. He's still going to be going to Tennessee.
Thanks to Mike for correcting me. Harrell is the offense coordinator at North Texas. Thank you for correcting me on that. I'm thinking I got head coaches in my mind right now. The word there. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I agree with that on there. I'm not going to get into now. People are going to we're rehashing the Fiesta Bowl, which I'm not going to do here.
Oh, okay. I can't.
So let me ask you this, Brian. What you've covered him for 3 years. What's your thoughts on now Josh Heupel now in past tense? How would you write the Josh Heupel UCF era? If I gave you a paragraph or two to kind of describe it to someone who covered pretty much 90+% of those pressers and pretty much every game.
Yeah, have fun, Tennessee media, with those pressers. They're a real ball.
Oh, don't worry. We'll let you give the platform to give Tennessee media advice here in a minute. But go.
No, it's fine. I thought he did a good job of sort of picking up where Frost left off. Again, I think the 9-3 season gets way too much flack considering how those losses occurred. Again, a player or two here changes everything. Thus changes the result, changes the complexion of the season and of the coach. 2018 was a massive success. You could always say, and I've said this before on the podcast, it did feel like to me that while he certainly kept the ball rolling, he was doing it with Scott Frost's players. And although he did, help Dylan Gabriel mature, to be the quarterback he is today, I don't think you can fault him on that. He certainly had a huge part in his development. Dylan Gabriel is here because of McKenzie Milton, who is here because of Scott Frost. It all ties back to Scott. I don't know how much of this past 3 years we can really put the stamp on and say Josh Heupel owns this. What's to be remembered that he really owns, because there's always the specter of Scott Frost and his recruiting and the players that were here for so long. A lot of those guys that just left were Scott Frost guys. I mean, Eric, really look at the guys that came in who never played for Scott, who were good offensive players. Maybe you could pick out Trey Nixon, who transferred here while Frost was still here, but didn't play his first game until 2018. The running backs have been okay. Obviously, Jalen Robinson comes in from Oklahoma, but he's a transfer, for one season under Heupel. So offensively, I don't know if he really did anything to separate himself. He just sort of kept the ball rolling, and then there was a slight dip, and now we move on to something else. It does feel anticlimactic. It doesn't feel like he really left a statement on this program. And then I'll say there were certainly flaws with coaching adjustments and his ability to adjust to what defenses were throwing at them, in certain weeks. This season especially. I know every week, Eric, we would get on the post-game Zoom with them after games. And I think probably 8 of the 10 games, Josh would say, well, they lined up in something that we weren't expecting. Why is that news? Because defenses watch tape too. They understand what they've seen and what you're going to see from them. They're going to try to mix it up. So it felt like to me when Josh was saying that, he was sort of admitting that they weren't ready for something new. And I just feel like there was a lack of imagination, inflexibility to really adjust when things got wrong, when things got bad. You certainly saw that in the Tulsa game last year. So I don't know. The legacy is, and I know I'm rambling, but there's a lot of thoughts in my head that I'm just sort of spewing out in like Tourette style. But the legacy is he did sort of pick up where Scott Frost left off. Didn't really do anything to enhance anything from when Scott Frost left. And now we sort of have to start over again with somebody, new. And after 6-4, you need to start building back up. I don't really know what his stamp on his program is, frankly. I really don't.
It's very fascinating. Viper the Show-Off writes, I'm a Tennessee fan. This morning I was a little mad about going through all that trouble to get the old coach. I thought through it, seen the numbers and players' reactions, and I'm all right with it. So that's a Tennessee fan. And I agree. Look, I get Tennessee. I don't know what Tennessee fans are expecting, big names and stuff like that. Sometimes, you know what? I think Josh is going to be a better coach for going through what he went through at UCF because that was his first head coaching job. He will put up points at Tennessee, which is something that hasn't happened there very frequently since Peyton Manning was there, quite frankly, and T. Martin, all right? I mean, I know they had some brief success with Butch Jones, but, man, I think he'll put points on the board and make Tennessee interesting. And by the way, did I see that right in the presser that Josh mentioned that he texted with Peyton Manning? Is that true?
Yes, that happened. Yes. So, well, again, guys, we really need to make a drinking game out of Peyton Manning mentions during the Danny White and Josh Heupel press conferences.
That is tremendous. I can't wait till that first time the three of them take a photo together or something. That's going to be wild. But I think Josh will do better at Tennessee. I think that he's going to make them respectable. They're going to put points on the board. And I think hey, it's an entertaining product. Because remember, when when Frost was hired, that was people questioned the hire, that Danny made. In fact, I won't mention the media person, but people that remember the press conference knows who it is. Kind of said, well, why would you leave the Oregon offensive coordinator job for this job? And so people were skeptical, but it was entertaining football. They talked about the offense going fast and things like that. And I think Tennessee will experience that. I think that's what Danny's trying to bring back, some excitement in football at Tennessee, which quite frankly they haven't had. So again, I wish him the best, right? I think I don't know, maybe I'm naive. I like to wish people the best when they move on. At the end, they did their time here, whether you like what some of the things that happened or didn't happen. He's not a bad guy. He's a good family guy from what I've heard. You could question his dirt. Certainly, I think his personality is going to be very interesting how that plays in the SEC. Because, man, I mean, Murph, what can describe if Tennessee media's why? I mean, how do you think that's all going to go? I'm finding that interesting. Danny White's already kind of, hey, we got to be positive and all that. And I'm like, Danny, you do know this is the SEC, right? There's going to be negativity no matter what.
Yeah, it's gonna be louder and more of it. People should and fans who are gonna watch Josh Heupel react to losses are gonna get mad really quickly because he's not a guy who fires you up. He's not a guy who instills passion in you. He's not a guy who displays a lot of fire and is pissed off about this loss and we gotta do better and slamming his hand on the dais. No, he's going to go out there and say, we came up a couple plays short and played hard on both sides of the ball.
Do you think he brings the 1-0, go 1-0? Does he use that over there or does he retire that?
Oh, absolutely. He'll play. No, all the classics. All the classics will be coming out. Tennessee Vols. Physical on both sides of the ball. All three phases, go 1-0. The strange, he has this way of starting every answer with okay, which is just now I'm doing. I found myself doing it too.
Right,
which scares the hell out of me. I mean, Josh has really rubbed off on me because I've been in so many pressers. But I hope people understand. And again, no Tennessee fans are really watching this, but. UCF fans know this. Hopefully, yeah, we got one. But UCF fans know this well. You can't react. You can't want Josh to go up there and start breathing smoke after a loss. It's not him. He's never going to do it. He's dull. He is absolute, just wallpaper in press conferences. It is what he is. We've seen, in locker rooms, he can be very excitable and amped up. But the fan base, when things go wrong or when things get tough, is going to want him to do a Calipari and just start airing guys out. That's never going to be his MO. He will never do that. And so that'll turn people off. But it is what it is. going back on the point you said, Eric, though, I think he's a good guy. I think he's a nice guy. I think he cares. I do feel like this, again, like we said at the top of the show, all of this could have been handled better somehow. I believe Dylan Gabriel, what he said this morning. So I feel like something had to be done to ameliorate that. But that doesn't overlook the fact that I do really think Josh Heupel cared about this program and these players here. And, just going forward, I do think he is a good man. And it'll work, like you said multiple times already, it'll help him go into a place where the expectations are lowered because they couldn't have been any higher when he got here. And maybe that was just unfair to him.
And I also would add this, and that's just why I root for Scott Frost to be successful in Nebraska, and I root for Josh Heupel to be successful at Tennessee, because at the end of the day, that helps the UCF brand. Hey, that's the program that develops these great coaches, which, you know, we've seen this in basketball with many programs that have done that. What I don't want, to me, Scott Frost failing at Nebraska and Josh Heupel failing at Tennessee doesn't help UCF, because now the critics would say, oh, you see that UCF thing, that was a fluke. That was a fluke. And we know that's not a fluke, but that's what they would say. See, these guys don't pan out there. So that's why I always root for coaches that leave UCF elsewhere that did their best here and had success to do well over there, because I do believe that helps the UCF brand, because you're attached to them, whether you like, they're attached to them forever. They're always going to be in that history books, UCF head football coaches. And they, by the way, Frost and Heupel both won conference championships for this program.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is meaningful. Absolutely.
Interesting question here. Is UCF going to have any sixth-year guys or seventh-year guys in 2021 that have been here for potentially 4 different head coaches? I don't think we would have a 7th-year guy, but maybe a 6th-year guy?
I don't think we have any. We definitely don't have any O'Leary holdovers. Okay. I mean, Michael Colubiali is not getting a 9th year of eligibility or whatever it was. But no, I mean, Jake Hescock is the only name that pops out to me, but I think he would be a 6th year guy, and he wasn't here until 2018 anyway. So yeah, we're not. I don't think we're gonna have any. Well, to the question, no, we will not have any O'Leary holdovers. That was a long time ago.
I love that creativity of the question, though. I'm a fan. Heupel left UCF with a $2.3 million a year contract. Is the next head coach going to be above that at the start? No, I don't think so, Murph. Do you? I mean, with the finances, the way they are today in society right now, with everything with the pandemic, I can't imagine. And I know UCF, as we mentioned earlier, they got a lot of money back in the buyouts from Tennessee. Unless it's like a Gus Malzahn or a Gene Chizik name, I don't think the next UCF head coach reaches that number.
No, I think you're right. And again, people should know that was the 2.3 number was part of an extension that he had signed after, at the end of the 2018 season, near the end of the 2018 season. He started at 1.7. Maybe that's more in the ballpark of what you're looking at. I mean, I really don't know, because I don't have firsthand knowledge of where UCF sits financially. We all know that they are in the red, but that's because everyone else is as an athletic department basically as well after this past year. I just don't know how much they would be willing to spend, but certainly not 2.3. No, that's too much. Maybe, I don't know, but certainly 1.7 would seem to make more sense.
Oh, I love this. Funny how Tennessee has immediately filed their open slots with pay games with CUSA and FCS teams. Is that a little shade at Danny White? I don't know. I don't think Danny scheduled that, though. Could he? He's not that fast.
No, and I mean, it's the SEC, so FCS games are like something you have to do. So
yeah, he basically said that basically the home and home with Tennessee dream died real fast. I don't think that was ever realistic. I could see a one-off. I remember we've talked about this in the past, where Brandon Helwig of UCFsports.com reported that Tennessee and UCF were in talks to play in Camping World, part of the Florida Citrus kickoff game, but Jeremy Pruitt, killed it. So
now, if you're the next UCF AD, you got to make a call, though. I mean, it's not going to happen, but you better make that call.
Well, let me. If you're Scott, let's say Scott Carr gets bumped up. Mm-hmm. Hey, Danny, how you doing? Hey, man, congrats, thanks. Hey, right. So Danny, remember you said, when you were working together here, we were having lunch that one day, and we were talking about, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we played Tennessee and up there in Camping World? What do you say now? I think that has to that go, right? Come on.
Yeah.
It's good. That's
absolutely. Twist his arm.
Another question people bring it up, and I think we brought this up. At least we brought it up with the running back coach. We brought it up earlier. They asked about his future, and then Burns, who was going to be here to be the new wide receiver coach from Auburn coming over. Burns,
Cody Burns.
Now they're asking, does he follow Josh back to the SEC and go to Tennessee? It could, right?
Maybe it's all possible, right? Like, is Matt Barrett going to be a UCF running back coach for 2 weeks? I don't know, possibly. We don't know. I don't know what else to say, guys. We'll find out along with the rest of you.
It's gonna be a fight. It's gonna be timeline. Do you have a date in mind where you think, hey, it'd be a good idea if we have this kind of figured out by then? I mean, I'll throw a couple dates out. Super Bowl weekend, Valentine's weekend. Anything there? Register there?
Yeah, you better, because spring football is like 6 weeks away if we're staying on the same schedule. So heaven forfend, certainly less than a month. I mean, to even get these coaches to know, even to get the head coach to know these guys' names before we head into the padded practices. Certainly I would imagine if UCF says they're going to take within a week to hire the search firm, I imagine they would like to have that AD search finalized within the week. After that, then the head coaching, vacancy would be filled probably in very short order, as we've talked about in the podcast about it being maybe a package deal where the AD is sort of simultaneously in negotiations with UCF and still looking for a head coach as well. So yeah, I would imagine by Valentine's Day, like, you need to have somebody in here.
Knoxville. See, Murph, you called out Tennessee fans. Here they come, brother.
2 Tennessee fans. Here we go.
Knoxville. I think Josh is exactly what Tennessee needs. Wish UCF all the best. Very well. By the way, Tennessee fans, you're tuning in the Circle SB Twitter account. Log into that right there. I did an interview with Karen and Ralph Weekly, the Tennessee softball co-head coaches, this past week to talk about the Outlook 2021 season. Tennessee's a big softball school, Murph. Big school.
I guess, but okay. Let's go.
We got Vols fans. They want to learn about Josh Heupel, Murph. You're underestimating the power of Vol Nation right now. Let's see. What do you think about 2-for-1? Says App State, Fresno State, Utah State rates. What do you think about doing 2-for-1s in the future? Well, that's a question for the next AD, but that is interesting because Danny White was very outspoken about the home and not doing 2-for-1s. In retrospect, did that backfire on him? Because now I know that's going to be the question they're going to ask the next AD, whoever that is, about his opinion on that, and we're going to compare the answers. I know it's coming. I personally think whatever the AD thinks is best for the school, and if it brings more revenue, do it. I'm not one that likes to duck people, so I don't care about that stuff. You got to do what's best for you. What do you say?
That makes sense. I don't think you're going to see the next AD hold so firmly to the 1-for-1, because I think we've seen the result of that and what pans out as a result. And as you and Jeff have broken down on this site before, maybe Danny did overplay his hand a little bit and got nothing for it. So yeah, I could probably see UCF being more amenable for 2-for-1s going forward, but I guess that's something that we will ask the next AD.
And again, there is that neutral game that's played every so often in the City Beautiful there in Campy World that could probably help you get some games too. It doesn't have to be 2-for-1s. You could do a one-off.
You can do a one-off.
You could do some creative stuff. So
but it all depends on the philosophy of your athletics director, really.
Right. No doubt. Any chance we get another roof claim value offer for stadium naming rights this year? You take that one, Murph. I'm not touching that one.
Okay. Definitely not roof claim. That's not happening.
No.
I don't know who else will be willing to pony up that much money for stadium naming rights. And that is also another thing that the AD is going to have to do when he gets here, because that's a very valuable revenue stream in a time where you need as many as you can get. But in this market, no one is going to be probably willing to pay that much money. So you're going to have to pay for less. But certainly, I would imagine. I mean, remember Danny White wanted a new name on that stadium as soon as possible. So I imagine the next AD would push for the same thing, and maybe we won't have a second year of the bounce house.
We're going to get down to the last questions here before we call it a day. Is UCF now a bigger pull for Tony Elliott this time around? That's the Clemson. We talked about him earlier. That's a hard thing to read because Tony Elliott's been rumored for jobs. You don't know what his thinking is. Again, he's probably making good money at Clemson. Does he think he's going to be the heir apparent to Dabo Swinney at some point? Some guys are just happy being coordinators. Who knows? That's kind of hard to say. And again, not to harp on it, but who's the AD? Who's the AD is going to dictate a lot of it. If it's
because, like you said, and we said this before. For those who are turning in late, Eric has sort of gone on record saying that you believe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you believe that there will be a connection from the AD to the football coach, some sort of relationship prior between those two people that will bring them to UCF. So whoever the AD is, then you can immediately start, canvassing his bio and going through where all his stops were and saying, well, this possible coach worked with him here. This possible coach worked with him here. But first, we got to get the AD installed.
And I think, by the way, I agree. That's exactly what I said, and I will add to it. What we just saw at Tennessee, I think you're going to see here at UCF. And in other words, the AD gets hired, he gets hired, and a few days later, the head coach is right here. I think it's going to be real fast. Oh boy, another question. Did see some talk about Joe Moorhead? Did you guys talk about him? No, we didn't. I know who brought that up. That's your friend Murph, Mr. Squint, our boy there. He started this.
Who is this?
Anthony Lynn, our boy Anthony, man.
Oh, Anthony. Oh, I love Anthony. Yes.
He brought up, and he on his Twitter, he likes Joe Moorhead. He loves his offense. He analyzed it on Twitter. He thinks that Joe Moorhead would be a great candidate here. Joe Moorhead is the offensive coordinator at Oregon right now. He was a longtime offensive coordinator at Penn State, was briefly the head coach at Mississippi State, got dismissed from that. That's who Anthony brought up. That's where that chatter started from. Anthony, so I guess you might be better off speaking on his behalf than me.
Well, Anthony is a huge. He breaks down football to the nth degree, a big time tape guru. So Anthony breaks down X's and O's. So I'm sort of intrigued by that suggestion because that means Anthony has done the tape work into Joe Moorhead and has broken him down as the head coach and how they would fit in UCF. So I would not be able to write that off. You seem more dismissive of that suggestion.
Well, I just didn't hear good things about Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State. Granted, it was brief, but it didn't seem like a fit. And what I heard was that Joe Moorhead's more of a Northeast guy, type West Coast. He's not really a guy in the South that relates. Now again, that's Mississippi State. So that's my only counter to that. He's not the youngest guy in the planet either. Not that, that's the end all be all, but I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. But he is a good offensive mind, and it goes back to the premise. I think we all do agree on this. I think the next head coach is going to be an offensive guy. I would be surprised if the next head coach is a defensive guy. I really would.
Yeah. Has to be an offensive guy. Really. I'd bet the house on it.
Ooh, bet the house on it. I like that. There we go. Another one. UCF women's basketball will host USF on Super Bowl. Yes, they is. They won tonight. So did the men against East Carolina. We're going to cover all that on the podcast once we get some sleep. So that will be on our podcast. That will come out. We'll probably record Thursday at some point, unless somebody else wants to leave to go to Tennessee, and then which who knows?
Dylan Gabriel's transferring.
Oh no! Don't start that. Don't start that. Because somebody did just ask about that, like, if the offense being kind of a deal there with Dylan there. But we will discuss basketball. We'll probably record Thursday. It'll probably come out late Thursday night, Friday. There'll be an interview in there with John Roddick, the UCF men's tennis coach, who as well in that episode, and who knows what else we'll discuss on that. So make sure you subscribe to our podcast for that info. We'll talk basketball as both teams won tonight against East Carolina. Someone brings up Grinch, the Oklahoma defensive coordinator. Would he be considered? I would. I personally, if you're gonna consider a defensive coordinator, I like Grinch. He's done a great job at Oklahoma. The thing is, I think he's going to shoot high. He's a pretty hot name. He's turned around the Oklahoma defense, so he might just stick around at Oklahoma and maybe get a Power 5 job here in the next couple of years for Grinch. And he could be the heir apparent if Lincoln Riley ever decides to jump ship to go to the NFL, which has been rumored for now 2-3 years. It seems like every year.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Although that would be funny if UCF did hire Grinch and he decided to come here, and we would. Basically, the last 2 head coaches had ties to the Oklahoma program in some ways. That kind of weird on that. All right, I think we're going to call it for now. This has been late. Murph wants to drink, and I want to sleep. I want to sleep. But final thoughts, Murph. Obviously, there you go. Ooh, their glass is empty already. Give me your final thoughts here on this kind of. I think Jeff said a great last week with Danny White when that news broke and we did this night shift, and he's like, "What a week today was," right? I kind of feel like today was another one where this thing and this was even longer because this broke 8, 9 in the morning, basically
7:30.
Wow.
Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I wasn't awake. I woke up to you guys talking about it. That's how later I was. But just give me your thoughts here overall on this now, and obviously we now wait to see what UCF does next. But just kind of put this in a bow here. On this week, people are freaking out. Some people are happy. I mean, it's a lot of emotions. It's been fascinating. It's been a fascinating month. This is with Milton departing, going to Florida State, and Bam Moore going to Florida State, Daryl Mack going to Old Dominion, Danny and now Josh going to Tennessee. It's been pretty wild. This is a week. This has been a month that certainly UCF fans won't forget anytime soon. But I think you mentioned it earlier. Not the end of the world. The good news is the sun will rise. We'll be fine at the big picture. But it's pretty wild. It's just kind of wild though. It's been wild.
I mean, it is. It happened so quickly, right? Again, like we said near the top of the show, both Danny White and Josh Heupel were a part of UCF a week ago. Really, I mean, it's amazing how quickly this all happened. I understand the anger and the vitriol and the sort of the just feeling as if once again UCF is just a stepping stone to a bigger job, and unfortunately that's kind of how it's going to be. I feel like this maybe makes you realize that nothing in that instance has really changed. I think UCF can still be extremely successful in short terms with the right head coaches and ADs, but with the way the system is set up now, and UCF having no real opportunity to fight for a national championship, at least one recognized, by everyone, that people are always going to want more. And Josh and Danny want to play for national titles, and unfortunately we can't do that here at UCF because of the way the system is set up. And I know people are upset about that. They're upset about Josh leaving, or they're happy about Josh leaving. That's fine. But I would say that Josh got way too much flack. I'm not his biggest defender, far from it, but he really did get way too much flack. And then ultimately, I would look upon this day as a day where UCF's football program resets itself again, but with the knowledge that this is not 2015. This is not a win. They're not coming off a winless season. This is not a complete tear-down rebuild. There's talent here. There's a brand here. People want to play here. People want to coach here. We've run through all the possibilities. This is still an attractive place to come play and coach. And you got good players who are already here, like high-scoring, good players. You just need to pick up the right guys. And so we'll see who UCF picks. And to me, that should be exciting. So I'm looking more toward the future, the short-term future of where does UCF go from here, and the excitement of really a new era. It left with Danny White. We'll see what the new era brings in the next couple of weeks. But this is not doomsday. I mean, you're just, this is a fresh start. But I don't feel demure about it. I don't feel depressed about it. I'm pretty excited, actually.
A couple more questions thrown in here. Now that Danny took Heupel and maybe others, does that mean we don't want anyone in the Danny White family now? I don't know. I don't know if we're dismissing family members now because of this. I think.
Well, I think did we dismiss Brian White as the?
We haven't brought him up. We haven't brought him up.
Yeah.
We talked about him though at the last night shift. Though it is kind of an odd situation there. I mean, to follow your brother there, so who knows? Interesting. I guess this happened tonight. Eric Mitchell announced he's going to FIU.
Yeah.
Randy Charlton is obviously at Mississippi State. Kenny Tournier is at Oregon State, or the TCU, excuse me, TCU. Your thoughts on that?
Good for him. I mean, I saw that. So I think that broke. I got the notification on that during the basketball game, and I don't think many people saw it. But hey, good for him. We were waiting to see where Eric Mitchell was going to go, where it's going to end up. Unfortunately, he will not be around for the 2022 meeting between FIU and UCF. But good for him. I have no ill will toward any of those players. Like Heupel, you wish them the best, and so be it. But at least he found a place to play. And he's a Miami guy. He's a South Florida guy, so he's going back home.
Go home. Makes sense. The man to lead UCF into the future at AD, the stash, Eric DeSalvo.
I think who said it? One of us said it. Was it you or Jeff who said that UCF, with everyone leaving, has to make sure they lock up Eric DeSalvo because
that was Jeffrey. There was people on message boards worried about whether DeSalvo's leaving as well. So that's a credit to him and the good work he does. People like him. He's bleeds black and gold, does great work.
I mean, hashtag content, man. It's a big deal. That's part of building your brand is the way you are able to advertise to the outside world. And I mean, you even saw Chris Vanini from The Athletic comment on one of those today. He commented on UCF back last year. UCF built a graphic showing you how close UCF is to the Star Wars exhibit over at Disney, and they made it really fancy, and they said in a galaxy not too far away. And Vanini is like, you show kids this, they're gonna want to play for UCF. The way the content department displays this program to the outside world is another reason why kids want to play here. The exterior image of this program, because of that content team, is heightened because they work their ass off to put out fantastic hashtag content.
Amen to that. So that's good. All right. So that'll do it for here this night shift. Amazing turnout. Thank you so much. I know everybody had so many questions. We appreciate you staying up this late with us. It's been a long day. We wanted to watch the basketball games and cover that. We will be doing a podcast. Make sure if you're subscribed, make sure you subscribe to our Black and Gold Banneret podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast shows. We're on there. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. We're going to have more content like this throughout, especially when all the sports get going. Me and Murph are still waiting, begging. Baseball, softball schedule. Come on. Give us the schedule.
I heard, Eric, that UCF baseball should have a schedule out in the next 2 to 4 days.
2 to 4
so there
days.
you go.
If me and Murph will probably do a special breaking down baseball, softball schedule. Book it. It's coming. We're thirsty. We need it.
That's all we know how to do.
I actually know the softball schedule, but I can't say. So nonetheless, it'll be pretty fun, but we're excited to that. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. We're going to post, by the way, on our YouTube page, our interview me and Murph did with Chad Matola at some point this week, but obviously things have been going on, so we've delayed that a little bit. He was our guest in our last week's podcast. There's an interview with Todd Dagenet up on our YouTube, so that's why you want to make sure you subscribe and leave us a review and like us there on the YouTube page. That'll help us. I know the subscriber numbers are growing on that, and make sure you follow us on all the platforms. We are here for you as all this stuff develops. We had a great crew. Shout out to Andrew Glukov, Danny Medina, who I think were on top of this stuff, man. The last 2 days were incredible on our staff, and Jeremy, and I think we did a heck of a job knocking these unpredictable stories in, like, that came out of nowhere, basically in seconds. It wasn't like we were led on or anything like this for days. So I want to give a shout out to our staff, and I hope people appreciate the work they're doing and we're doing there, helping out for this site and this company. So it's been tremendous. There it is, blackandgoldbanneret.com. Like us on Facebook, and of course, follow us at UCF_Banneret. And you know where to find Murph and me on Twitter by now on there. So for Murph, I'm Eric. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift. Tune in to Black and Gold Banneret later this week. We'll break down maybe more if more news comes out of this story, developing story, and then as well as basketball and other sports in UCF and other news going on. But until then, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift. Until next time, good night and charge on.